Checklist by Atul Gawande. Why are checklists important? Well, because there are only two reasons for failure: ignorance and inaptitude. Ignorance is a word that comes from the Latin ignorantia, which means not knowing. And we fail due to ignorance when science offers us an incomplete, partial understanding of the world, how things work. Now, the second type of failure is based on inaptitude. This word also comes from the Latin ineptus, meaning absurd, unsuitable, unable. Now, in this case, there is knowledge. Science has already provided us an answer to what should be done. However, failure can still happen due to our inaptitude when we don't apply the knowledge correctly. As science advances, there is more and more information that is proven to solve many of our problems. And the paradox is that the sheer amount of information makes our decision-making more complex. With more knowledge, there are fewer reasons to fail due to ignorance. However, cases of inaptitude and not putting knowledge into practice correctly, they are increasing. And this is where checklists make all the difference. Checklists save lives. Whether it is to make a plane take off, or to build a skyscraper, or for a doctor to operate on a patient, or for you to become who you want to be, checklists are the simplest and the most efficient tool to ensure that things are done right. And no matter how good you are at a certain subject, the right checklists can greatly improve your results. In the Checklist Manifesto, How to Get Things Right, Dr. Atul Gawande details for us how such a simple tool can be so powerful for anyone who wants to be more productive, optimize time, and ensure higher performance. So, in today's Arata Academy Summary, we will look at the ideas behind the book, and specifically how you can apply these ideas to fulfill your big life goals. A checklist is a list of clear steps that need to be completed to carry out a procedure correctly. Now let's look at using checklists in practice with an example. There's only one official way to contact Arata Academy, and that is through the form that is available at arata.se/contact, and we receive hundreds, even thousands of messages depending on the day. And how do we assure that we can correctly respond to all messages consistently? When the Arata Academy team receives a message, we look to see if the person has contacted us before, or if this is the first time they have written to us. If they have contacted us before, then we check to make sure that the previous contact has already been resolved. This is the preparation checklist. Then we read the content of the message to check if the type of request has already been dealt with before, has been documented before. We have operational manuals that document exactly what should be done in recurrent situations. If it is already documented, then the team follows up without needing my personal opinion. However, in the cases where the team does not know what to do, I provide guidelines and internal training sessions so the whole team knows what to do in similar cases in the future. This shows how checklists can increase the quality of customer service. The world has become more complex. Checklists are a way to simplify your day-to-day life. A few decades ago, science still had little information on how to solve problems that today are considered simple. So it was common not to be able to solve certain problems for pure lack of knowledge. However, as the knowledge base of humanity increases, decision-making becomes more and more complex. Knowledge helps us, but it also hinders us by overwhelming us. Now, many of the mistakes we encounter in solving problems are more related to the misapplication of knowledge and less related to just lack of information. People like to criticize those who make mistakes, especially at work. However, it takes more than just extra training to be reducing human errors. In different fields of knowledge, the educational process is becoming longer and more rigorous. So just increasing the amount, the length of the training, this is not enough. Even with long training, long certification processes, we still find professionals from many different areas making basic mistakes and not using the necessary and the well-known procedures to solve certain problems. And these are mistakes that could have been avoided. The access of information in an increasingly complex world ends up causing even the most well-trained and most experienced professionals to make mistakes from time to time. How can we reduce the complexity of our tasks? By using checklists. A doctor may have her own checklists to be diagnosing her patients, and she could even use one specific type of checklist for each type of disease. She may also have a checklist to keep up to date with the latest news in her field, and still use checklists to take care of her own health, maintain her relationships, and even have some fun. See, in my case, for example, just to give you an idea, I have a travel checklist. It includes the preparatory phases, the reservations that need to be made, and even what exactly to pack. So I know exactly what to take in my hand luggage, for example, cables and batteries, and what goes into the larger bags. It may seem like a lot, but structuring processes in the form of lists is a very efficient way to simplify your life. Even if it takes a while to be structuring everything in the best possible way, once the checklist is ready, everything becomes easier. Well-designed checklists prevent serious errors, and they also improve the quality of your work. A good checklist should have all the steps that you need to take to follow a procedure. And this includes the obvious steps, those that everyone should know, because it is precisely these obvious steps that end up being forgotten or skipped. For example, one of the first steps to provide support for someone who writes to Arata Academy is to verify if they are already a student in one of our courses. And this makes a big difference because our students have questions about the lessons, about the interactive activities. Their questions, their doubts are more advanced. They require more detailed response from our follow-up team compared to the doubts of someone who has never enrolled in a course, who usually have more simple questions about technical procedures. It would be wrong to answer a message without first checking who is this person, whether this person writing to us is already a student or not. This could cause errors. It would be wrong, for example, to send an enrollment link to a person who is already a student who already have access to the course. So this example explains how we can think of checklists as a tool, as a safety net to help us to prevent mistakes like this. And this net should also contain all the essential steps, but also should be as short as possible. Your checklist should only include the items that are essential to perform the procedure. Essential items are those that, if they're not done, they could lead to disastrous results. These items should also be clear, so you don't have to waste time trying to understand what they mean. For example, instead of something abstract, like help the student to access the course, I should instead write something more specific, like send the link to change the password to the student. Furthermore, it also has to be clear whether it is a read-do list or a do-confirm list. Read-do lists are the ones that have to be followed one step at a time. You read the first item on the list, then you do it, and then you mark it as done. Then you read the next item, then you do what it says, and so on. It is similar to following a cooking recipe. Now, the do-confirm lists, they involve simply doing everything that you think that has to be done using your memory. And when you think you have already completed everything that needs to be done, then you pause, then you can read through the entire list and you can check all the items on the checklist that have already been completed. The checklist should also be concise. Include all the essential items, but don't turn your checklist into a complete and detailed manual of how to do each task. For example, in aviation, each checklist should ideally contain 5 to 9 items, so that it can be read in about 1 minute. The checklists need to be brief and clear to prevent pilots from getting distracted and skipping some of the essential items. This does not mean that you must stick within these numbers. You should just follow the general rule of making your checklist as complete as possible with the essential items, without overdoing it or adding irrelevant details. A checklist is not final and definitive. Actually, you should continuously refine your checklists. Another practical tip is that you will only know if your checklist is good once you put it into practice. As you use the list, you'll find that some checklist items are unnecessary and they can be removed. Other items need to be modified or put in a different sequential order. In practice, you will find that new items need to be added. For example, every time I go on a trip and something goes wrong, I open my travel checklist and I make adjustments to avoid the same problem happening again. Similarly, when you create checklists for your different situations in your personal life, at work, and in a team, you should continually check whether there are any mistakes. Think about how your checklist can be improved to avoid repeating the mistake and make the adjustments accordingly. You can even add a date or give a version number to the most recent change to your checklist. Checklists are essential for good teamwork. If you work in a team, checklists are also a great tool to ensure the standard and the quality of the final work. But you need to make it clear to the whole team that the checklist is a tool created to help. Because if you force the use of the checklist without allowing the team to really understand what is the point of it, there is a great risk that they will reject the idea, and the checklist might not be taken seriously. In some teams, it is quite common for people to just mark all items as completed without even checking every single item. When a job is done by many specialists, each one acts in their area of expertise. If the whole team has a common checklist with the steps that each one should take, the whole work becomes much more effective. This saves time, reduces stress, and increases the quality of the final work. Have you seen the movie Sully with Tom Hanks? It is based on a true story of the flight 1549, which had to make an emergency landing in the Hudson River just a few minutes after taking off from the New York airport in 2009. At that time, the media glorified the pilot as a hero who had prevented the deaths of hundreds of passengers. But the pilot himself reminded everyone that the emergency landing was only successful because the whole team together followed the checklist procedures for situations like that. If certain members of the team had not followed the items that were assigned to them, the pilot would not have been able to land safely. You can do the same with your work. Get your team together and start defining the essential items for each procedure that you do at work. Keep this checklist in a place that everyone has access to, such as a shared task management application. And then start using the checklist and refine it until it becomes a safe guide for you to get the job done in the best quality possible. The biggest difference with shared checklists is that the team needs to have good communication. If a team member sees an item that is marked as complete, they need to be sure that it is actually done. Otherwise, people lose confidence in the checklist and it becomes useless. To improve communication, you can use the checklist itself to inform team members that they need to communicate to the next member about the task that has been completed. Checklists can save people's lives, but they can also greatly improve yours. Being a medical doctor, Atul Gawande gives many examples of how checklists are used in hospitals to save the lives of sick or injured patients. He gives the example of a 19-item checklist that was tested by the World Health Organization in 8 hospitals and resulted in a 47% reduction in surgical deaths. And you can also use checklists, not to cure diseases, but to prevent them. Remember the morning ritual that we talked about in the episode 139 in the series Hello, say Arata. This ritual is nothing more than a checklist with a series of tasks that you can do when you wake up to ensure that you start the day in the healthiest and most productive way possible. The same goes for your personal goals. To be the person you want to be, you need to do the tasks that are required to achieve that goal. For example, suppose you want to be an athletic, physically fit person. Well, then you need to eat well, to exercise, and to sleep well. You can have a checklist for your diet, for your workout, for your free time, Once you plan and you list what you need to do to meet your goal, you will have just to follow your checklist. This idea can be used for all your big dreams. Being who you want to be and fulfilling your life plan can be as simple as listing what needs to be done, then following the plan. Ideally, these lists and goals should be included in a larger life plan that also includes your personal values and other deeper reflections, as we teach in the Planning Your Life course. Basically, if you want to reach a goal, you have to first structure what you need to do and then turn that into a checklist to turn your intentions into concrete actions. Checklists are lists of steps that need to be completed in order to perform a procedure correctly. A tool as simple as this helps you save lives, produce higher quality work, and reach your biggest goals. You can start using the power of checklists in your life right now. Choose a procedure that you perform at home or at work and structure it into a checklist of essential items, and then start using that list and refine it every time until you have the ideal model list. If you want to take it a step further, make these checklists part of your larger life plan. A plan that includes everything from your highest personal values to the next items that you need to accomplish in your to-do lists. And you can learn how to plan such a life plan together in the Planning Your Life course that is available at arata.se/planning your life.